In part 4, we look at energy and well-being and how it affects not only panic monkey, but our sensory and processing as well. We look at why the energy demands are so much higher for autistics than the majority, which can lead to chronic fatigue and burnout if the battery isn't managed properly. We look at why meltdowns often occur when we're enjoying ourselves and having fun. And we look at other reasons why our brain may tell us that we are tired and why it's so important to be able to differentiate between an energy drain and a refusal of our brain to engage. And finally, we look at why managing our battery is so important to be able to function to our best, and the basics of what to do if you've drained the battery completely and reached burnout. Unsurprisingly, our energy levels and our well-being affect the way we function. And that's true for everyone. Have you ever tried to do something when you're really tired and you end up messing it up really badly, even though you'd have done it absolutely brilliantly if you weren't tired? The tireder we are, the more mistakes happen because our processing is dropping, and we get more irritable because our air traffic controller doesn't have the capacity to keep panic monkey settled anymore. And the same effect happens when we're unwell. If we're in pain or if we're sick, there's little capacity available for our air traffic controller. And it's this fact that con artists have used to prey on scared parents, telling them that toxins cause autism and that their special diet will cure it. This is a lie. It is purely there to gain the money of scared parents, and it's a horrible thing to do. It's not true. Diets don't cure autism. However, they do cure digestive issues, which are not only causing discomfort, but affect our nutrition uptake. And it's well worth going to a nutritionist to see if there's a gluten or lactose sensitivity, for instance, because a lot of autistics do struggle with digestive issues. Something very common amongst autistics is chronic fatigue. It's something that I suffered from all my life and could never find an explanation for, despite repeated tests by doctors exploring every option they could think of. Eventually, we just wrote it off as one of those things. Once I discovered about processing and my sensory profile, it made a lot more sense. The reason we suffer from chronic fatigue is because we have more connections that fire faster and more often than the majority, and so our brains burn through energy a lot faster, as well as the processing demands of managing a spiky sensory system and trying to function in an overly busy environment. All of this creates a lot more activity and a lot more higher energy demand. So very often, supply is very much smaller than the demands of living our lives, which means we tire faster than most and we have to recharge our battery much more often than everyone else. Recharging our battery isn't always straightforward. One example is when we're out and having fun, because that can feel very much like we're recharging our battery because we're energized. Our brain is pumping adrenaline, we're getting full of dopamine, our glitter chimp is so excited, and we're having all of the fun of the fair. We're having all the bells, the whistles, the light, everything is going off, and we don't realize that this is draining the battery flat. And because we're so busy with the funfair and having fun, we're not paying attention to the battery. And we can go from boom to bust almost instantly, really excited to meltdown in a blink, and we wonder where it came from. We were having such fun. How did it go wrong? That's why, because we weren't paying attention to the battery, we weren't building in break times during the day, and we burned out and we tanked our battery completely. And when we did that, it triggered a meltdown. So we just need to be a little bit aware of that and take some care in the future. Low energy isn't always the reason we feel tired. Sometimes the brain gives a tired signal because it just doesn't want to do the thing. For instance, it's a possible threat, which will then trigger dino brain's freeze response, effectively narcolepsy. In addition, if there is a sensory issue, the brain may want to avoid this. So for instance, having a shower or cleaning our teeth can be quite uncomfortable. And our brain goes, yeah, no, I'm tired. Actually, deal with the sensory, find ways to get around that. For instance, non-minty toothpastes, and the brain won't give the tired response anymore. Trauma isn't the only reason. The other reasons can be things like it's not interesting, or it's not going to provide dopamine, or we've been caught by inertia and we can't get going from rest. We're nice and comfy on the couch and just don't want to leave this space. Or we're stuck with executive function. We can't see the start point or the sequence we need to progress the task. And because we don't know where to start, the brain just goes, no, I'm tired, and doesn't engage at all. Or the task is too big to reach completion, or the task list is overwhelmingly large. And when we're overwhelmed, or we can't get a completion point, then that is really uncomfortable for us. If we can't complete, it's like sandpaper to the brain, and the brain goes, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. If you can't give me a completion point, we're not even beginning. But in those cases, if you can identify and address the barrier, then the brain goes, hey, this isn't too bad after all. And then it'll switch off the tired signal. So it's always worth looking at those first to see if you can get the brain to do that. However, if the brain is still going, I'm tired, then it's really important to accept that you genuinely have a low battery. Don't try and push on through, to power on through the tiredness, because society says if we take a break, we're lazy, we're useless, we're a waste of space, we're not pulling our weight. Society doesn't know what it's talking about, because if our battery is full and we're working to capacity, boy, can we contribute. But we can't do that with a tanked battery, because guess what happens if we tank our battery? First, you're going to end up with meltdown after meltdown after meltdown, which is affecting our functioning, affecting our well-being, causes severe anxiety, causes severe depression. And if you keep on going doing that, guess what? You end up in burnout. And that's when you can't function anymore. The brain just switches off and says, nope, you have blitzed the nervous system. There is too much damage here. You won't stop to let me rest and recover. So guess what? I'm going to force you to. I'm not going to engage now until I'm healed. Go away, talk to somebody else. And after you've been through burnout, the brain remembers. It remembers that trauma. Now, anytime you get close to overdoing it, the brain just shuts down and goes, no, I remember burnout from last time. We're not going anywhere near that. And each time you go through burnout, it becomes more and more risk averse. And so your capacity will drop and drop and drop. And as you get older, when you get someone like myself, it's not just age that's affecting my battery now, it's all of the burnouts I've been through. Learning about our battery, the things that drain it, the things that boost it, and how to recognize where our energy levels are at is essential to our mental functioning and our general well-being as autistics. A low battery affects our ability to process, it affects our sensory levels, it affects our ability to regulate. It can cause severe anxiety and depression, and can even badly affect our ability to sleep. Because the lower the battery, the lower the processing, the less able air traffic controller is to keep Panic Monkey calm. So as our anxiety goes up and Panic Monkey becomes more and more determined that there's a saber-toothed tiger out there ready to pounce and make us a Scooby snack, the less able we are to sleep, because that's too vulnerable. And the less able we are to sleep, guess what? Our battery goes down and we end up in this vicious cycle. No sleep, too tired, low processing, severe anxiety, no sleep. So we need to make sure that we don't get caught into that loop. So many late identified autistics will tell you of their bouts of burnout and severe depression and anxiety that have been throughout their lives. For me, there's been times when even deciding whether I want a cup of tea or not seems like too big a mental effort to achieve. I become a non-functioning being when I'm in severe burnout. I am entirely reliant on somebody else to look after me. It is not a great place to be. And most of us, the first time we experience burnout is as a teenager. The first time a lot of autistics are identified is as a late teenager because they've ended up in burnout. They've been dealing with school, all of the processing, all of the sensory, all of the other things that will tank our battery, and they ignore all the warning signals because they need to keep going. They have to keep pressing on. They have to keep pressing on. And then they end up in burnout. And in burnout, the nervous system has effectively broken for misuse and abuse. All the energy reserves are gone. Nothing is working properly anymore. And what does school do? Instead of acknowledging the damage, they push these young people to get back to full pace as soon as the first sign of recovery. Well, if they can game, they can go back to school. Well, no, because gaming is a much lower demand level than school. It's like saying, if you can walk to the end of the garden, you're now fit to run a marathon. Not the same thing at all. Think of it like a broken foot. The solution isn't to ignore it and keep using the foot as before. If you've broken your foot, first thing you've got to do is take the weight off. Give it time to heal. Let that bone knit. And then you only very, very slowly start building things up again. Build up those energy demands. Build up the strength of that broken bone. Think of it as a sort of a mental couch to 5K. You're gradually building back the energy levels in a way that doesn't trigger more meltdowns. And over again, I see this in the forums. Parents are really stressed at the amount of schooling their young person is missing while they recover. But they don't understand that if you put that young person back into school too early, they're not gaining any more learning because the young person can't learn. The processing isn't there. The anxiety is too high. All they're going to gain from being in school is more exhaustion and more trauma. However, when you do give the young person time to recover, time to reset, time to rebuild, when the young person's ready, they then can catch up quite quickly. In week 4 of the speed course, we cover both energy and well-being. We look at how autistics can respond differently to pain and how that affects everything else. We look at the autistic battery, what drains it, what boosts it, and how to plan ahead to avoid the harmful boom-bust cycle that most autistics end up in. We look at nutrition and ways we can help maintain a healthy energy supply. And we look at exercise and how using exercise to regulate and calm our panic monkey can also boost our battery. So if you're interested in learning more, check it out at www.insideout.com.